let's take this opportunity to talk a little bit about Backpay and how far back they will go, and just a little bit more about the dates, because it's already confusing. Everything we've already talked about.
Oh, sure.
We're
It's
we're
very
doing
complicated.
we're doing our best to
Right.
speak precisely with this, but it's a complicated system. A lot of dates, a lot of provisions that only apply to specific programs that all sound the same. So, with that being said, I'll use VA benefits as an example, as a contrast, right? VA benefits, they'll go back. Is there any amount of time that they'll cap out, or they just go, your back pay could be how many years?
A lot.
A lot.
I'm not sure what it is, but it's
Substantial.
A lot. Yeah.
SSDI doesn't do that.
No.
So break that down.
Yeah, so there are a few dates that you want to pay special attention to. For SSDI, you want to pay special attention to your AOD, which stands for alleged onset date, and that is simply the date you became disabled. It might be the day you stopped working, but it may be the date that you had an episode, a CVA, a stroke, heart attack, a car accident. But the AOD, your alleged onset date, that's the date you're telling Social Security you became disabled. From the last time you worked, going 5 years into the future is the DLI, which is the date last insured. Also, this is only for SSDI. SSI doesn't have a date last insured because you're usually not insured if you're applying for SSI. But the alleged onset date is when you've told Social Security you became disabled, and if they agree with you, that will be your date of disability. However, they can only pay you 12 months prior to your filing date. So it gets complicated, but I'll be as simple as I can be.
We're doing our best here.
Yeah, so let's say that you became disabled on January the 1st of some year, and you waited a few months to see if you were going to get better, and you didn't. And so January 1st of the next year, you applied. And you say, well, I became disabled last January. Well, that's 12 months. And if they agree with you, if the medical records support it, then they will pay you, except for those 5 months, the waiting period. But they'll find you disabled as of January when you became disabled, even though you didn't apply until January of the next year. However, let's say that you became disabled 2 years ago. And for whatever reason, you didn't apply until now. So,
Yep.
My onset date is, 2024, but we're in 2026, but they're going to pay me back for 2024 if they find me disabled back then, right? Nope. Not just no, but never. They can only pay you back because of the way the law is written. The statute is they can only go back 12 months prior to your filing date. What's cool about that, though, is let's say you became disabled 2 years ago and they agree with you. So let's just back it up. January 2026 is when you filed. But January 2024, 2 years ago, is when you became disabled. They say, yeah, January of 2024 is when you became disabled. But you're like, okay, well, they can only pay 12 months. Well, they're going to pay you the full 12 months in this case, because if they find you disabled 2 years ago, that 5-month waiting period is sucked up in that. So they'll actually pay you from January of last year. So the waiting period, a lot of times when we have an onset date like that, we want to make sure that we get that 17 months. We want to make sure that the onset date's 17 months prior to the filing date. Why? Because 5 of that month is going to be waiting. You wouldn't be paid for it. But if we can say that you became disabled and the medical records support it, then your waiting period is not going to affect you the way it would some other person's waiting period where they applied a year or less ago.
Yeah, and so really 17 months, that is when you permanently stop, that's when you permanently start losing potential back pay.
That's right.
Because if you wait 12 months or 15 months or 17 months, and then you apply and you get approved, you're not really missing any back pay because we can go all the way back.
That's right.
But if you wait 18 months, you're still only going to get that 12. And then if it's 24 months or if it's 5 years, then you run into problems. If you wait too long, you might not be eligible at all. But
right.
Yeah, I talk to a lot of people that it's the same story as they stop working and then they just thought they were going to get better. It's like,
Right.
well, I didn't think I would be out of work this long. I thought I would get better. And now it's been 3 years.
Right, and the program has such a bad reputation that that's another reason that we hear, because it begs the question: you became disabled 3 years ago. Why are you just now contacting us to file a claim for you? Well, I thought I was going to get better, and I've heard that it's just a horribly
Yeah.
long, arduous process. It is horribly long and it is arduous, yeah, but you can lose benefits by waiting. When the people online or the people on TV say, you need to apply now, that's one of those rare instances where what they're saying is actually true.
Yeah.
So waiting, it's reasonable to wait to see if you're going to get better, or if you have a procedure coming up and you think that will correct something that you're having a problem with, or you're mixing up medications, especially mental health. You see this a lot. Okay, we're going to try to find something that's going to help you be able to function better. You see that a lot in medical records for mental health disorders. And so you're very optimistic, and they're trying me on this and they're trying me on that. And they usually do that for about 3 months. It's not working. Okay, we'll try something else for 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And, time gets away from you. And the next thing you know, oh, I'm going to apply for disability, but I became disabled a couple of years ago. It can happen, and we see it every day. So, and I understand it, but if you're watching this, apply as quickly as you can. And we've talked about this before. If you apply and the medication does work, or if you apply and you do have a procedure, or you apply and just your body actually gets better, still heals yourself, and you just withdraw your case. No harm, no foul.
Mm-hmm.
Social Security doesn't hold that against you. It doesn't affect a disability case if you have to file it in the future. It doesn't affect your retirement. It doesn't affect anything. No harm, no foul. And we're not going to get mad about it. Hey, I got better. I'd like to withdraw my case. Sorry that you spent so much time on the case. No harm, no foul.
Mm-hmm.
So
We actually
better,
appreciate it if they're upfront with us.
Yeah, it's better to file and then say, well, I got better. I'm able to work, than to just hope pie in the sky that you're going to be able to get better and you're going to be able to go back to work. And you wake up one morning and it's been 18 months and
Yep.
now you're against the clock, losing benefits.
What's the actual term for the entitlement date? Not the onset date, but the date that you actually become eligible for cash benefits. Is it just called the entitlement date?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to recap just to break this down. The AOD, I'm going to go over 3 things. The
Okay.
AOD is the alleged onset date.
Right.
That is the date that you're telling us as your representative and therefore Social Security that you became disabled and unable to work.
Correct.
On that date. The entitlement date, when you actually become eligible for benefits, is going to be 5 months after that, assuming that they approve you.
Correct.
Your DLI is your date last insured, and that is the date that you have to prove that you became disabled by that date for SSDI specifically.
Right.
Generally, when you stop working, you have 5 years. Your DLI is 5 years in the future, and so an example of when that would be a problem is if you've been out of work for I'll put it this way. Say your date last insured is 2025, which means you have to prove that you became disabled before 2025.
That's right.
And then when you apply your AOD, you put your onset date. You're saying when I became disabled is 2026. If you're eligible for SSI, it's not a problem. We'll just help you with that part of the case. But if you're not eligible for SSI, you run into a real problem there because
Right.
Social Security is saying in order for you to technically qualify, you have to prove you became disabled before that date in
That's right.
2025.
Yeah.
And here you are saying that I didn't become disabled until 2026.
And you would literally be technically ineligible. Most of our technical ineligibility cases are Title 16 or SSI cases, but that's one of those cases. In fact, that's the main case that we see is, I can't work, beyond, January of 2026. Well, your DLI was, in September of 2025. You're technically not eligible. You're outside that window. And I always call it a window because I think that helps.
It's the best way to put it.
It helps people see that, At the beginning is when the window has opened, and the DLI, or the day you became insured or stopped working, is the beginning of that window. And then the DLI, the date last insured, is at usually 5 months or 5 years. Sometimes it's less than that, though. And I think there's some bad communication online about the DLI. It's not always 5 years. For example, if you didn't work steady or you didn't make a lot of money, if there are gaps in several quarters of your work, that you might have stopped working, 2 years ago, and your DLI is 1 year ago, and that can happen. Wait a minute, that's not 5 years. Well, no, because if your earnings were sporadic or really low, your DLI can possibly not extend 5 years.
So really, what we mean by that is if you worked consistently without any major gaps up until you stop working due to your health,
Right.
then typically your date last insured is
It'd be
5 years.
yeah.
But really what it is you have to work 5 out of the past 10 years.
That's right.
It's not always 5 years after you stop working. It's really 5 out of the past 10 years.
Yep.
So if you've only worked 4 out of the past 10 years, even if it was, you stopped working a couple years ago, 1 or 2 years ago, that would mess up your date last insured, because it would only
Absolutely.
be 4 out of the past 10 years.
Absolutely.
Okay. That's a lot of acronyms.
Yeah.
I think we'll end it there. I have compassion for people that get confused by this, because I get confused by
Sure.
this, and
Yeah.
because it's a lot of dates and terms and programs, but I think that breaks it down pretty well.
Good.
Cool. If you have a question about your disability case, drop it in the comment section below, and we will do our best to answer it in the next episode.